Welcome back to Full Court Tennis Advantage. I'm Brian Teacher, Australian Open champ, longtime coach, and founder of the Full Court Tennis app, which is built to give players, parents, and coaches a smarter way to train with video strategy and real-time feedback. Today, we're breaking down the 2025 U.S. Open men's finals. Carlos Alcaraz beat Jannik Sinner in 4 sets, 6-2, 3-6, 6-1, 6-4. But this episode isn't about score lines. It's about learning elite patterns, turning them into junior drills, and fixing the biggest mistakes we see in player development. And joining me today is Jack Broudy, a friend and creator of the non-linear tennis system, who's going to help us break down the mechanics, the mindset, and the movement that separate winners from watchers. Hi, Jack. So let's start with number one. Sinner's first serve percentage was 48%. Let me just say that again, 48%. His season average is 65. His last 5 matches were 68, 71, 67, 70, and 62. Now, this wasn't nerves and it wasn't heat, and possibly Sinner was a bit injured as he's always incredibly stoic. We couldn't tell, but it was also Alcaraz. And if you looked at Alcaraz, he stood 10 feet behind the baseline, took pace off the ball, read the spin, and turned second serves into attack shots. So when Sinner misses his first serve, Alcaraz won 55% of second serve return points, 43% on his first serve. And so the ability to turn offense into defense and then attack on the second serve more was a big deal. So Jack, in nonlinear tennis, how would you train your kid to improve his return to serve and maybe not be exactly like, Alcaraz, because that's impossible, but at least to get to neutralize the server and flip the pressure back without overhitting?
Well, in nonlinear tennis, I much more believe in the sway than the bouncing. Some of the first round.
I love that, by the way. I hate bouncing.
Yeah, the bouncing is what you see the early round losers. Whenever I walk at the U.S. Open or Indian Wells, and the ones that I see bouncing up and down are generally the ones that lose right away early to the seeds. And the seeds, like Serena and Sabalenka, they're always in their center, right? They're in their core, they're swaying. Rafa, the bull, right? He was famous for it, and he would scrape the ground. And so to me, that swaying represents not only the figure eight, right? Kind of like a baseball player,
Right.
who, how they wiggle, or a golfer as they get up, they shift from foot to foot. And so to me, it's those two 45-degree angles that they're measuring up. So they basically sway from one to the other. And then as soon as the ball's hit, like you and I like to say, right? The crack of the bat, right? As soon as it's hit, they shift their attention and their gaze to contact. Where is the contact going to be made? And my belief is that the greats have an unconscious knowing where it's going to be made, which is at the 45-degree angle, which you and I have discussed. The 45 is perfect in nature, right?
Agree with what you say. They have to see that. But the first thing they do when the ball is struck on the opponent's strings is they quickly beat their balance quickly before the ball comes over the net.
Well, that's with the split step, right?
Yes.
That they get their feet evenly and they get their haunch up, right? Their butt up a little bit, so they're in their athletic crouched position.
A third of
right?
a second, 130 mile an hour from when that ball hits their strings to bounce.
Right. So you don't have time to do anything with your shoulders or your racket. There's no time for that. All you can do is take your attention and your eyes, right? They can move quite quickly, the quickest, and you put it out to where perfect contact would be.
Tell me if you agree or disagree.
Okay.
When a player basically can look right that the ball's going there, but if he doesn't have his body at least slightly turned with the racket back, in other words, he could be his arm straight out parallel to the baseline, he ain't going to get any power. He's got to have at least a little flex with his racket back a little.
Right. Well, I don't even believe parallel to the baseline. I don't even believe they do that much. Sometimes what I think it's more of an internal move. And I think people see it as an external move, but it's not. It's an optical illusion. Like I've mentioned before, a shortstop catches and throws in the same motion, right? But it's not. And people will go, oh, he's got great wrists. Well, that's just the tip of the iceberg. The reason they can catch and throw in the same motion where I was a second baseman, I couldn't do it. I wasn't a natural athlete like the shortstop. I would catch, turn, throw to the second baseman. And I also played center field. I would catch, step, and throw. But the guys that can catch and throw in the same motion, right? It's not just the wrist. That's the tip of the iceberg. So what they do is they line up that 45, and then sometimes it's a bigger motion and their arm can follow the
No
hips. And
question.
sometimes it's
No
just
question.
a ripple. Sometimes it's just a ripple. So it's just rippling down that 45, and there is no parallel to the baseline. There's been plenty of times on the return of serve where they just go right out to contact with the slightest nonlinear, slightest, where you don't even see it. It almost looks like they're sticking their arm out. So
Yeah, but when
I
you
don't
say
even
it
believe in, I don't
nonlinear,
even
the
believe in the
bottom line is
baseline
there is a
necessarily.
coil with the body of a little bit of a turn with the racket. So there's a connection there, basically.
That's right. And like I said, it's an optical illusion. It might look like the wrist is doing everything, but it's just the
I don't
opposite.
think it looks like the wrist is doing any. I think it's the body and the legs loading the swing, basically. And it depends on how fast it comes.
It's that continuous motion at the 45, right? They go in and out, they catch and release. So a very small move, like I said, like a shortstop, looks so cool. And they get all that power to get all the way from short to first base. How do they do it? Well, they do it because it is an optical illusion. It's their entire body doing it. It's not just their arm or not just their hips. It's everything coordinated. So their hips lead, even if it's the slightest, their hips lead, the arm trails, and in both directions. So they get this whip-like at the 45-degree angle. And it all begins at the 45 because that's perfect in nature, right? It bisects the vertical and the horizontal, and it's perfect in nature. Every free thrower stands 45.
But if I was to look at Djokovic or any of the returners, and I've done this in slow motion and full court tennis app, that the bottom line is that when the ball is tossed up and hit, that for instance, Djokovic has his balance and he's already seen the ball and knows if it's a forehand or backhand. By the
Correct.
time the ball crosses the net, if it's a forehand, his right foot is moved out and his torso is slightly turned and the racket is back. And if he doesn't get in that position, he'll never get the leverage to go forward into the ball and bring the swing through. And it's the same with his backhand, the balance, the left foot goes out, slight turn, the racket passes back, and then he can move out to the ball. So I see that pattern. You can call it linear, non-linear, I don't know, but I see that pattern and it has to be there as far as I see.
Where do you see them balanced? What are they balanced? See, that might be the difference here. I agree, balance is great, but just because you're standing doesn't mean you're balanced. I see it balanced on the contact and balanced at the 45. So I agree with you. It's all about balance, but balance on what?
Well, balance so that they can balance with their body so they can bring it through the 45 and balance. That's what I see.
Exactly.
So watching the match, we were able to see that Sinner would put Alcaraz on defense, that when Sinner would hit a great offensive shot, what I thought was so amazing is that quite a few times Alcaraz would be able to still maneuver his feet, go on defense, and still give with the shot, hit a looping topspin that would be unbelievable defense, not just a defensive shot. He would go to that defense and then Sinner would respond. It would be such a defensive shot that Alcaraz would be back on offense in the next points. To me, that seems like, oh my God, that's unbelievable. It's the spacing, it's the eyesight and the ability to control the 45, basically, is what you would like to say, I think.
You have total control when everything's perfectly in balance. And like I said, the 45, you look in through history, whether it's a microscope or a bullwhip, everything relates to the 45. And geometry, if you look into all that, it all is based on the right angle. And what is perfect? The 45. That's why a skier comes down the hill in an S curve, or a surfer cuts in and out of the 45. It's all the same. So when Alcaraz is at the 45 and his hips are there, his intent, his eyes, and his racket face has gone slightly from concave in a coil, right, to convex where he bumps the ball, you can do anything. You have total control at that point. He probably could have tried a drop shot too. He could have done anything because that's where your balance point is. And that's just the way it is. And we'll talk about volleys and other things later, maybe. But certainly you have total control at the 45-degree angle. So,
Yeah.
and the nice thing about it is you don't have to tell someone, step in on your volleys, do this, turn sideways, lay your wrist, just line up. Line up and understand where perfection is. And then you'll be able to hit it more often. If that's your own, if that's your only
It's true,
focus.
but maybe a little easier said than done, right? You have to start somewhere. And it's a great concept to line up to the 45, get your feet to line up. We're on the same page with that. As far as the winners, Alcaraz hit 42 winners. He made 24 unforced errors. Sinner, 21 winners, but had 34 unforced errors. So that's kind of the story, twice the winners versus unforced errors for basically Alcaraz. And Sinner actually more errors, like 50% more errors than winners, more actually. So Alcaraz kind of outperformed him. He was like everything was effortless. He was like a magician that had all the answers totally tied in. He'd watch this guy play so many times and visualize this that it was almost like he knew uncannily what was going to happen before it happened. And his spacing and his reaction were incredible. How he saw the ball. It was like he let everything just flow. He was a complete master of every aspect of the game. I don't think we've ever seen anybody that masterful on a tennis court.
It
And
was
I'm talking about any player in the last 20 years. I've never seen a match like that, to be perfectly honest.
it was a clinic. It was a clinic, and some of those unforced errors weren't as unforced as you might think because Alcaraz was making head fakes. I watched it the second time and I saw some head fakes, and he would make him feel like he had to go a bigger angle, and then he would miss by a couple of inches. So unforced, yes,
A
but
lot of
they're
pressure.
in a way they're forced psychologically. So I wouldn't say they were completely
I
unforced
think it
because, like
was
I
I think it was psychological. I think it was physical. I think he was just like overbearing on the guy. No matter what he did, he had every answer. But how do you train kids from being too aggressive? You know, there's got to be a balance between aggressive and defense, right? Is that happening a lot in the nonlinear game that you can teach them to be more offensive, nonlinear, and to use the defense nonlinear? What are your thoughts on that?
so much about it to me, and I think you find this through the ages, whether it's Rosewall Laver, whether it's Borg Connors, whether it's Federer Nadal or Djokovic Federer, or now today Alcaraz Sinner. It's not as selfish as I think most people think. It's not all about the player. I think there's a life of the ball. And I think these guys learn to do the right thing at the right time because the ball sort of has a life of its own, right? So if you're hit on a wide shot, but you see him covering an angle, well, then you're going to have to do something different. These guys force each other to do something different. I agree with you. It was incredibly well played, but the dynamics were very much like we've seen in the past, all the way back to Laver Rosewall. The ball kind of has a life of its own. And I try to explain to my students, mostly kids, but actually everybody now, that, do your part, right? If the
Right.
ball doesn't call for something, don't do it, right? If the
Yeah.
ball is short, don't try to hit a topspin winner. Maybe you should wait, or maybe you should move your ass up a little bit and so you can line the shot up, or maybe you need to wait for that ball to drop lower so it gets to your 45. But don't just do something because you want to do it. Do something because the ball dictates it.
You
The
got
path, I should say, the path of the
you got to
ball.
manage. You got to manage the game, so you don't want to give it away, right? With
That's
more
right.
errors than winners, you got to be able to manage it. I agree with that completely. The other aspect was the net game was incredible. That Alcaraz came in 25 times and won 21 of those points for 84%. Sinner came in 13 times, just a little over half, but he won 10. So that's a good percentage, but he didn't come in nearly enough. The other guy came in literally twice as much. The mindset different. Alcaraz created pressure. For whatever reason, Sinner kind of waited for it and wasn't able to create that same kind of pressure. What do you tell kids today? How do you get them to try to understand the volley and to be able to use that? Because I see on today that the kids don't really understand the net game. Coaches aren't teaching it enough.
I'm happy to answer that, but let me start. Your first premise was Sinner needed to get to net more. Don't underestimate the serve problems. Without having confidence of getting 65% of your first serves in, you don't expect anyone to come into net that much. How do I encourage my students? I tell them it's all the same. Everything's the same. Your volley's at the 45. Your serve, except for the kick, is at the 45. Your flat, your slice, your
So
top slice.
in other words, when you say
It's
everything's
the
at the
same
fourth,
philosophy. Once you understand where contact is before you even hit it, once you know where contact is, you realize, I know what this is. I'm not going to get caught on my back
I
foot. I'm
understand
going to take the
exactly
half
what you're
volley. I'm going to
saying.
take the volley.
I understand exactly what you're saying, but I'm going to give you a different scenario.
Okay.
Let's say I ran around, I hit an inside out forehand.
Okay.
Okay. And I hit it to the backhand corner.
So
And
you're playing
I
a righty.
know
You're playing
by
a righty.
playing,
Okay.
and I know from the player I'm playing and how he moves that he is not going to be able to get to that ball without having a stretch and hit a
Uh-huh.
slice. I have to then see, I can wait for the ball to come back and get it a 45, or I can charge the net before he's hit it. So
Sure.
that's basically a different situation by your skill level, what you're good
Yeah.
at doing. And that's one of the problems that I'm talking about, is that the players and the coaches aren't good with the skill level, so they don't even have that option available to them. So how much time should coaches teach the kids up at net to play up at net? It's a different footwork. It's a different mindset. I'm not disagreeing. You still have to be able to load and hit the ball at the 45, no question, and get your energy through it. So how much time of the game? It's a big part of the game. Kids
Oh,
today
well,
don't
you're
even
asking
have to
me
have
what
to.
I do? What I do? We never leave without doing minimum overhead touch the net, 25 of them, minimum bump up and across, which is a drill we do that enforces a perfect lineup. When you bump the ball up to yourself and then bump it over the net to your partner, and they bump it up to themselves and hit it back to you, the only way to really do that drill is to take it at the 45, whether it's a backhand or the forehand. You have to be perfect, because that's where the ball dies. That's where you have the most control. If you take the ball behind the 45, it'll go behind you. If you take it in front of the 45, it'll either go in the net or over the net. But if you want the ball to die, you have to be perfect at that 45, like a tree branch, and let the ball or the birdie land on the branch. So we do drills like that. We spend, I would say, in a typical lesson, after I've given them a lot of basics, I would say 35% ground strokes, 30 to 35% up at net.
Yeah,
Lot
I mean,
over
I think it needs to be.
overheads and volleys. And then I would say we always spend, and I know guys don't do this, but we spend at least 30%, 25% on serves. I think you have to have an all court game. And I
Yeah,
tell the kids, build your philosophy, have an all court game where everything builds upon everything. There are no weak spots in nonlinear tennis. If your backhand is good, that means your forehand's good. We have the same system, the same science on every
yeah,
stroke. So the better you make your volleys, it improves your groundies. And my kids, my students, my adults, I've got them convinced. We've all drank the Kool-Aid, and we're all convinced that if you enforce these tenets that are in nature, and like I told you before, my system is based on the traveling wave, which is a small move in the center creates a larger figure eight in the arms. And if it's all lined up to the 45, that's where your perfection is. And that's what you see. If you start looking for it in Sinner and Alcaraz, you see it. You see it in Federer. You see it. It's so obvious when you're looking for these things. Long and short answer to your question is I spend a ton of time at net, and it's very important because it's part of the overall game, and you have to have an all-court game,
right.
whether you like it or not.
I look at it like, yeah, you got to spend at least 25% of the time up there. And then eventually, as you get better, you go into 2-on-1 drills. If you're playing tournament level, where one guy's up at net and two guys are in the backcourt and they're moving you around, and you got to try to penetrate through the court to get control of the point, and then you try to knock the point off. If they're trying to move you around, their goal is not to win the point, is to move you around up and back. You learn how to basically cover the court, smash, get back, and quickly cover the net, because it's a completely different movement, a different mindset. And every position you're trying to get, I will agree, you're trying to get at the 45 to get through the ball. It's so important to get these kids confident up at the net so that they can
Agreed.
have an extra dimension or an extra asset in their tool bag so that they can solve problems and exploit their opponent. Another key point that I focused on is the mindset in that match. Was amazing that Alcaraz, he's always smiling. He's never really tight. Well, you can't see that he's tight. There's a credible amount of on the line, but he seems to be smiling. You know, Sinner looked a little bit like paying his taxes or something, right? Smiling creates the relaxation in your nervous system, and breathing resets the brain. And Alcaraz played like he was in his backyard. It looks like he didn't feel pressure, like he felt joyful and excited. And Sinner, you could see, was under pressure. And certainly the fact, whatever reason, if he was injured, which I think he might have been a little bit, he served at 48%. And agreed, as you said, he doesn't get as many opportunities with that. You're always under pressure at the pros. It's very hard to win any match in the pros at 48% against anybody in the top 100, basically. If you're serving at 48%, good luck, right? It's very hard. And so I think one of the main things that parents can do is not put pressure on the kid and immediately say, why did you lose? It's more like, what did you feel during the match? Or what do you think happened and stuff? So you're not like pointing your finger at it, because you have to be able to find at some point, but don't feel like you're being the critical parent to the student, to your kid, because you don't want to put him off the game. You want to be able to help him and be a partner in him feeling good about the game and solving the problems. And a lot of it is about the parent being able to build this trust with the kid to kind of move together. The parent needs to be oversee it. Is that coach actually good for my kid? You don't want to wait till they're 13 and 14 and find out, oh my God, my kid's got bad technique and I should have changed coaches, right? So get involved, but make sure you give the coach some video, record some video. Do what we do in full court tennis is record the video, send it in to a coach like Jack, myself, or one of our 800 coaches. We have WTA, ATP coaches where you can analyze the match and figure out and send it back. You got to be able to correct why you lost. If you don't correct why you lost, you can't move on. Video is a mirror that never lies. When kids see it, they believe it. I know, Jack, you use video with a lot of your lessons. Please tell the audience how important it is for you with your nonlinear tennis and what you're doing with your students and using video.
Well, I keep my brain on overtime with you because we went from one place to another. So let's start with smiling and the joy, because that's a very big thing. And then we'll get into the video.
Good.
So briefly, Alcaraz had a better tournament. We both know that. Sinner had a lot of issues. He didn't serve well not his best the whole tournament. More unforced errors than we've seen. Yes, he made it to the finals, but we expected that. So I think when you're in the flow, and Alcaraz was absolutely in the flow this entire tournament. When I say in the flow, I mean technically in the flow. He was connected to contact. Like you say, his balance was connected to contact. He felt balanced. He felt, not to use a silly term, but he felt godlike out there. He felt like an animal, a bird flying, a fish swimming. He felt natural, so he could smile. So I'm not sure if you smile first and then you get your act together. I think it's the opposite, personally. I think when you feel connected, then you can smile.
But he's always smiling. If you see him all the time, he's smiling, doesn't he?
No. I've seen Matt. I've
Okay.
seen Matt. Wimbledon. He was not happy in Wimbledon.
Okay.
I've seen matches where but he was connected. He was in the flow.
He definitely was in the flow. He had
He was in the
visualized this.
flow the whole tournament. He felt in the pocket. Everything was in his wheelhouse. Like I
I
said,
agree with that completely.
he was a natural, I use the word natural athlete. He felt like a natural athlete, like something that belonged on the court, that belonged in nature. And that's because, in my eyes, as I see it, he was connected to contact. He had that movement of a shortstop, right? The catch and throw in the same motion, like skimming a rock across a lake. He had all that going on, and that's when you smile. And so I personally think it comes opposite. I don't think you smile first. I think you train yourself to be in the flow. You train yourself to line up and do the right things. You get in good habits, and then you get in the flow. And when you're in the flow, you're joyful, and you can't help but smile. I kind of see it differently. I see the play and the attention to this natural laws in geometry and in nature. I see those things come out, and then the joy comes from that. So that's what I see. And then as far as the parents, educate yourself. Don't just drop the kid off and think, because let me tell you, it's not an 80-20 in tennis. In San Diego, there was 3 of us. We had all the ranked kids. In LA, it's the same. I don't care what town you're in. It's always the same. There's 2 or 3 coaches that have everybody, and they're not even necessarily the best, but they're doing something right. I think the parents should read my book so they can at least go, oh, do I want my kid playing this type of tennis, or do I want them with some coach that just says the latest buzzwords and works their tail off? Is my kid the kind of kid that wants to just be yelled at, and if they miss a shot, take 2 laps? You have to figure out what's going to work with your kid.
I think all the guys at the top, that they're all mindful. They're very mindful, and they very control their emotions very good. Certainly the male players that I've seen.
True.
Some of the female players are very good too, but I think consistently the male players are a little better at controlling it. I think from this match in general, that what the parents and coaches and players can take away is that when you look at it, that you see the return to serve, you're consistent and have a good return to serve. That's what breaks serves. That can win you match. Defense can become offense in one shot, like Alcaraz did, if you train it. He took one of Sinner's offensive shots and turned it defense, and it was such a good defensive shot, he switched it immediately and became offense for him. And you saw the winner error ratio. Basically, it's kind of your scoreboard. You can't make more errors than winners, basically. So you need to manage your consistency in your play and monitor that during the match. Of course, we saw in the match, net play wins matches, not just rallying from the backcourt. Come in, get a mindset to come into net, develop your volley. You got to have a good volley in your tool chest. And mindset is mechanics. As we see with Alcaraz, for whatever reason, he was in good form, visualizing it, and he's smiling the whole time in the finals with everything on the line. The guy has joy as one of his weapons. And he certainly used visualization, visualize himself playing that match. He saw Sinner play a million matches before. He studied the video. He's played it many times more. So he was ready and for that moment. And so visualization and video training is part of this. All these guys use video. They study video. They study their own video. They make sure their strategy, that their spacing of the ball, their technique is good. And that's why I built Full Court Tennis app and Full Court Tennis website, is to bring pro level training into real life. And that's why Jack's nonlinear system is in the app with video drills to show slow motion examples and ground up instruction. Go download Full Court Tennis app. Go inside to the Full Court feed. You'll see some of Jack's exclusive drills there. It's free for all, and it's going to change how your kid hits the ball. And I just want to say thanks, Jack, for being here. And I got one final question. What's the one mindset shift you wish every parent could make today?
What do I really wish? Well, you know me. My goal in life is to change the way not only it's taught, but the way tennis is perceived. I still don't think they have good angles when they watch it on TV. You never get to see a serve. They focus in on the face like we care. And then all of a sudden, right as they toss, they go 100 miles away. So you never get to, I don't even think they perceive the game at the high levels of commentating. So of course, my theory would be, and by the way, we use drones as well, because you were talking about visualization. You know, with nonlinear tennis, not only do we have the tools to make you do the figure eight, we actually have lines on the court that put the 45-degree. And we have other lines that show you how your arm plays off of your figure eight. So you can live into these things that are larger, these principles that are larger than you or any one person. Djokovic, I don't care who you name, these principles, they transcend any one player. And like I said, that's my goal, is to change the way tennis is taught, perceived, played, so we all get that joy. No one gets more joy than I get at 70 playing, and I play nothing but singles.
Okay.
No one gets more joy than me, and I pull off some righteous shots, crazy shots I never could have pulled off in college because I didn't have my shit together. I didn't know how to catch and release. Let's put it this way. I couldn't be the shortstop. But now when I play baseball, I am the shortstop because I understand, oh my God, I was doing it all wrong. I tried to do it with my wrist and the ball went all over. So I would just say, parents, players, whoever, educate yourself. Okay. Just educate. And try to find something that looks right. Don't just drop your kid off at the local park or the local club because it's convenient. That is not the way to teach your kid. Maybe it's the way to teach your kid soccer or football or something else, but not tennis. Tennis is a thinking man's sport. So you have to start that way. Educate yourself, educate your kid, and then decide which way you want to go.
Great. So everybody go out and get Jack Broudy's nonlinear tennis book, and he'll sign it for you. I'm sure he will. That's it for today's episode of Full Court Tennis Advantage. Go to the video and study it. Yeah, load it up to Full Court Tennis, train the sine wave, and go play with joy under pressure. And we'll see you next time. I'm Brian Teacher, and Jack Broudy saying bye.
My pleasure, Brian.